Hello everybody, welcome back to It's Current Year for another quick battle ladder replay. Today I'm up against JXC, who's playing the Vampire Counts. I'm playing the Tomb King, so it's an undead Royal Rumble on the Glacial Lake. And this is one of the poorest matchups for the Tomb Kings, and they have several of those, it's fair to say. Probably half the matchups in the game, I would say, are at least considerably unfavoured for the Tomb Kings. They're probably the worst first pick faction in the game currently, but I actually like their place in the meta. We'll go through a little bit of that later, maybe in the end screen, and as to why. But my opponent's force, taking the Vampire Counts, zombies out the front to chaff it up, some Graveguard behind them, regular Graveguard as well as Graveguard with great weapons. Graveguard are really a bit of a bane for Tomb Kings. They outclass Tomb Guard considerably, basically outclass all the Tomb King's infantry, and then particularly the Great Weapon variant can even just chip away at constructs and the like. We've got some Blood Knights out on the flank here, as well as two Vargheists, who I do really like in this matchup. Very fast. People get carried away with 290 weapon strength, being a little bit subpar for a 1400 gold monster, but they have very, very quick attack animations. They attack quite fast, and in pairs they can chunk down things like constructs very, very quickly. Also regen, and can be used as a cycle charger in their own right, given their speed. We have a Necromancer on a corpse cart over here, who is rocking the Forbidden Rod, the Raised Dead, as well as Van Hel's Dance Macabre, so some combat buffs here. And up in the air, we've got the Strigoi Vampire Lord, who is riding a Terrorgeist. Normally a good pick, and normally a Lord that I like. It looks like he is taking Power Stone and the Opal Amulet, as well as the Ghoul King, and then his other buffs. So he's got the self heal there. Hasn't got Claws of Morcane, which is interesting because the armor piercing damage can be quite clutch when you need it. But he is Gaze of Nagash as well as Invocation. So I'll put it on a pause here just because I do want to talk about the Ghoul King. Is a good pick, and you'd think the anti-large that the Terrorgeist affords him is nice, but Terrorgeists are really, really poor combatants when they land. They have very, very poor attack animations. They don't have good, they don't have the jumping sort of animations that dragons have, even the undead dragons, not Chaos Dragons and that like, because Chaos Dragons are probably the worst dragons in the game. But yeah, he's sort of caught between being a good pick. I mean, Spirit Leech is normally a good spell. I'm a bit surprised not to see it here, but yeah, once he lands, he can struggle a little bit, and that's where maybe the Blood Dragon probably eclipses him in this matchup. So we'll move on to my own force. I've got a couple of Nehekara Warriors just for chaff clearing skeleton spears and zombies. They will beat them very quick. They lose quite considerably to Graveguard, but I did have some extra money, so I upgraded some units here. 2 units of regular Skeleton Warriors, 3 units of Skeleton Spears, bringing up the rear. I brought some Chariots just for perhaps the potential just to try and even out the fight and make sure that in the late game I don't just get ground down. Even if I can win sort of the big monster duel, that I don't just get ground down by Graveguard. So the Chariot's going to do a lot of cycle charging here. And they're my main damage dealing core. And everything's a bit bunched up here, so I do apologise. But we've got the Eyes of the Desert, Sepulchral Stalkers. We've got the 2 units of Necropolis Knights with Halberds, who do have reasonably good stats. Given that everything you want to kill here for the Vampire Counts is going to be large. You know, the anti-large bonus that they do have here is quite considerable. So if we can get it up here, yep, 28 bonus versus large means they hit really, really hard. Poison attacks means they do allow things to be trapped in quite well. So they're a decent pick here. You just do have to be a little bit careful that you don't get too overconfident and don't get them isolated, because they don't have a Necrotect or anything like here to heal them. But we've taken also Cetra up on his War Kitty. I took the Blessed Blade here because I wanted the fire damage, because I thought the Strigoi is quite a common pick here, and being weak to fire, you want some way to imbue that. We've also got the Wrath of Petrarch just for a bit of damage. And then we've got the Incantation of Protection and the Jaff's Incantation of Cursed Blades. So we're just going to be spamming them, trying to get as much healing as we can. Now, the Sepulchral Stalkers might have been on another map. I might have taken the Great Bow ROR. As we see my Chariots just getting bowled out here. I noticed there's nothing out over here that can trap them in. I don't want them anywhere near Blood Knights. So they're just going to have a bit of a free reign over here, actually. Not a lot of mass to guard them, and they might get some pretty good damage in and allow my infantry just to hold up a bit longer. So the burst damage here of the Eyes of the Desert we see coming in, and the Opal Amulet has already been popped. Perhaps a little bit trigger happy there from my opponent. Probably didn't quite need to pop that unless he was going to dive down, but it isn't a single use, so he will get multiple uses of that. Again, just coming out to meet the force, and I'm trying to stay relatively, I guess, as boxed up as the Tomb King's build like this would with my infantry, and just try and pull around, pull through my own spears. We get a nice counter charge here on the Blood Knights from our Necropolis Knights. Cetra's in here. He did have the Blessed Blade of Petra, so again, fire damage is going to be pretty big on the Vargulfs, but there's a lot of stuff in here, and potentially my attack animations are getting a little bit mixed up. And my infantry, for the most part, is holding fairly well. I mean, these skeleton spears are already crumbling, but you'd expect that when you're fighting Graveguard. And now that the Tomb Guard, the Strigoi have landed, we can get the Sepulchral Guard, or the Sepulchral Stalkers rather, to pull out through the spears and just do as much damage as possible. And I'm not sending infantry in where I don't need it. You know, one unit of infantry, I mean, these skeleton warriors are going to die, that's a given. And we've done quite well out on this flank, you know, getting our chariots into the Graveguard, and we've actually cleared up this flank quite well. So the zombies are off the field, and again, just using my spears as buffer and just getting some counter charges where we can. Cetra is going to come out here, as well as the Necropolis Knights. Ghoul King of Vushura being popped as well by my opponent. Again, probably save that for when you want to dive down and when you're going to take a lot of damage. But now we're turning our attention to the Vargulfs, and the Vargulfs don't have great leadership, so don't take burst damage quite well. And Sepulchral Stalkers with their eye lasers have a lot of missile strength. 158, not a lot of armor piercing, but Vargulfs don't have a lot of armor. And this is where I like the Sepulchral Stalkers over a unit of Great Bows. Particularly on a smaller map, they're probably a better pick. But they can actually protect themselves in combat. They have charge defense. So as we see, Nero's incantation of Cursed Blades and Jaff's incantation of protection and Cursed Blades going down on them. So they're juiced up pretty nicely here. And we're turning, having fought off the Blood Knights, we're going to get a nice pin in here on the Strigoi, who's not in a good neighborhood, dragging our Sepulchral Stalkers back, because now that we've got the anti-large of the Halberds, we don't need them fighting in combat. We want them using as much ammo as they can before they are committed to combat as a combat unit. But we're actually cleaning up the infantry fight really well, and this is something that the Tomb Guard, even like Tomb Guard for Tomb Kings, won't help you do. But I mean, we've won the infantry fight, which Tomb Kings really struggled to do, and these chariots have had a bit of a field day. 70 kills, 67 kills over here. Our Necropolis Knights over here are getting a little bit beaten up. They've still got 13 unit models, so they're going to put a lot of hits on this Vargulf, but this unit over here is very healthy, coming in, and the single entities for the vampire counts a little bit punched up here. I noticed this, and I do get my Sharpty summoned down, so they're going to come into the rear here. But we've got spears poking away at the Vargulf, which isn't very well armored. We've got the, obviously, Sharpty ready to pin in here, and we are pulling around with these Necropolis Knights, ready to just get a full surround and pretty much finish this game. It's going well for me. I think Cetra's going to have a hard time chasing, because obviously 68 speed to 80, that's in my favour. And my opponent is going to pull out, having stabilised our Sepulchral Stalkers, and a big mosh pit fight going down here. Yeah, there wasn't any infantry left for these guys to fight on, and we've got, like, look how healthy our infantry is here. Spears, still Nehakara warriors fighting in here. The chariots are still going, so a nice victory in the end against a faction that the Tomb Kings traditionally really have struggled with. So, where did it go wrong for my opponent? Some of the timings on his ability uses weren't great, and there's not a lot of value here on the Strigoi. I think, as I said, the Strigoi isn't a bad pick here. It's anti-large, and you'd think, well, the stuff that you want to kill for the Tomb Kings is going to be constructs. It's going to be, you know, Cetra, that kind of thing, all large. But Terrorgeists, once they land, are really poor duelists, and it's as I said, it's not a stat issue, it's an animation issue. They just don't land hits very well, even in fights that you'd expect them to. So yeah, just couldn't get a lot of work done. I would have liked to have seen Spirit Leech as well. I think if you're taking the Strigo Vampire Lord, it's so that you can get Spirit Leech. One of the reasons is it allows you to take Spirit Leech in your Lord slot rather than having to pay for a Vampire. And obviously there's times where you do need Spirit Leech as the Vampire counts. But yeah, interesting loadout on the Strigo Vampire Lord. I'm not sure why Claws of Morkane were cut. I think Spirit Leech would have been better than Gaze of Nagash, even though Gaze of Nagash is casket insurance, because sometimes the Tomb Kings will go casket. But we were able to just bully him, and yeah, the chariots, where are our chariots? Yeah, 900 value, over 900 there. Pushing a lot of the Graveguard out of combat as well, which just bought time. Look how healthy our spears are. Like, I've never seen that before on in a Tomb Kings game. So, Nehekara Warriors obviously not getting a lot of value, but they did what they needed to do, just clearing through zombie chaff, and allowed the Sepulchral Stalker ROR. See, on a small map, on a bigger map, I would probably go the Ushabti ROR with the Great Bows, because they can do their spray fire mode, and they can clear infantry, and they can potentially shoot the vampire monsters. But I think on a smaller map where I was going to play quite compact, yeah, just having them as a bit of an all-purpose unit. Obviously, the difference between them and the Beausharpti ROR is that the Eyes of the Desert absolutely suck at killing infantry. Sepulchral Stalkers in general just aren't good at killing infantry. But we sort of had other plays against the Graveguard. And the Necropolis Knights. I've been playing with these guys a fair bit recently. Not just in this matchup. They've always been kind of okay in this matchup, because they do actually trade okay into Blood Knights, particularly if you can give them whack incantation of protection down on them and just give them a bit of holding power. But yeah, they're getting good value, and they were used obviously as mass blockers here as well. And Cetra's just sort of roamed around. Cetra actually hasn't got a lot of value, but yeah, he was very expensive as well. So there was a lot of macro going on in that front line and trying to get on the right targets while my abilities were popped. But yeah, the Varghulfs struggled a bit, Blood Knights struggled a little bit, Graveguard, a lot of kills, but not, I suppose, reasonably good value on them. They are a real terror for Tomb Kings. So yeah, good to pull out a win against a favoured faction. I've been trying to play this matchup a bit, because it's one of the bad ones for Tomb Kings. Anyway, thanks to my opponent JXC for the game. Thanks to you guys for checking it out, and we'll be back with more soon. Take care.